This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode contains spoilers from the book Want, curated by Gillian Anderson, and includes mentions of sex education, supernatural, X-Files, and Drive Me Crazy. For full list, please see show notes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the fantasy, literature, and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are discussing Want by Gillian Anderson.
Which, I'm so excited. This book came out last year, and we figured it was a great way to kick off Women's History Month. But as of the day we're recording, that apparently doesn't seem to exist anymore with our current administration. But we will persevere through that and not agree and continue to talk about the things that we love, the things that are discussed in Want, which Gillian Anderson says she's a curator of these stories, and kind of our first exposure to Gillian, or what we remember, and everything and the themes that are encompassed in this book.
Jessica Marie, what was your first experience with the force that is Gillian Anderson?
I feel so behind the curve because I wasn't allowed to watch X-Files in the 90s, and I remember, I think it was our Drive Me Crazy episode when they were talking about Gillian Anderson, and they were like, well, which Gillian Anderson would you pick? And I was like, well, just by, educational elimination. Well, I never watched X-Files, so it can't be that one. And I can't remember what the second one was, but I always thought that, I don't remember, her artistry until Sex Education really got consumed by her. What about you? Well, I think we know, but...
Well, that's an excellent way to put it, consumed by her. I was a young child when I was exposed to X-Files, foundational show. Gillian Anderson, also Dave Duchovny. Oh my God. Can you imagine, as a young person, the two of them... the chemistry, the tension. Oh my God. The two of them. And then they have funny episodes, and then there's dramatic episodes. And then this is back when TV was TV, people, 22 plus seasons. We had filler episodes, monsters of the week. We had season spanning character arcs. Shit was crucial back then. It was absolutely amazing.
And regular. It wasn't 3-4 season years between seasons.
No. 20 plus episodes every single year. They gave you the premiere date. As the show was ending, they're like, tune in next season. We're fucking ready for it. Those were the fucking days. So imagine then growing up with Gillian Anderson as a fucking redhead, solving crime, but not just solving crime, solving supernatural crime, where she is a religious scientist. Already we have the conflict. And then, she's the skeptic. And then, of course, Mulder is the true believer. And then the story at the end of that is it's flipped. It's very fun. It's very interesting. It is incredible to watch Gillian Anderson go from short, kind of red, 90s hair with the suits, right? As, she gets, it's amazing, amazing shit. So then here's the thing. We say we say thank you. Ooh. We say thank you to certain male celebrities for always being there for you in every aspect of your life, right? They're always attractive no matter what. We don't really say that a lot to women, do we? I will say that now to Gillian Anderson. Thank you for being there for me in every facet of my life. For a significant portion of my life, you gave me X-Files. And then you dropped this fucking bomb on my lap called Sex Education. All right.
It's everything.
It's everything.
And
let's set
it up. Let's talk about it for a bit too, because I feel it'll be all encompassing in the episode. And I don't feel like enough people talk about the show or know about the show, at least in our experiences.
Yes. Jessica Marie, how did you hear about this show?
As I hear about most wonderful things through you.
Through me. And I have no credit here. I will take no credit. I heard about this show when I was living in Germany through my lash girl, Diana, shout out. And she was watching the show and she was like, yo, you need to watch this show. She spoke perfect English, by the way. I feel like, I don't know, like context is important. We got down like that. She was like, yo, you need to watch this show. It's awesome. It's called Sex Education. Don't worry about the title. I know don't worry about the title. It's weird. I know. Gillian Anderson is in it. It's good as hell. I was like,
I feel like she didn't even have to tell you anything. There's this new show with Gillian. You would have been sold. I don't even need you to finish that sentence. Sold.
And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay. Like English, British. All right. Let's go. Amazing. It is. So here's the thing. I watched that pilot and I had, of course, in Germany, no one to fucking talk about it besides Deanna. And like, she's my like business work kind of person. We're not like cool friends, talk about it, call on the phone type situation. So what did I do? I said, Jess, you got to watch this.
What Laura tells me to do that. I mean, usually in show context, because at this point I hadn't refound my love for reading. So this was like any show. I mean, she is the reason I got into Doctor Who. She is the reason I got into Supernatural. She is the reason that which honestly, the pipeline has always been there. You've just like been slowly rebuilding my foundation for everything that I love. So thank you for that. But this is one of the things. It was great. It was perfect. Then there was nobody to talk to. And because the title could be off-putting, how do you casually bring that up in a professional setting if you're working? Oh, one of my favorite shows is Sex Education. And it's not just one of those, oh, it's a Netflix show. Take Netflix out of this because that's where it does stream. It is one of the best shows of all time, I think.
Yes. So for this episode, where we're talking about Gillian Anderson's one, and we will, we watched the pilot and I watched it twice and I had to stop myself both times from going to the next episode because it's so good and it's so funny and it's so quotable. Editor Sam is walking around going, you've got a minge on your wall. There's a bowl bag on your TV. It's just amazing. Adam is so funny in the first episode. But here's the thing. I make noises when Dr. Jill comes on screen.
I'm like giddy, like I'm giggling.
When she comes on screen, that first moment, because like we already know that she's having sex with like a younger man. That is like kind of set up through context clues. And then she comes downstairs and you're just like, oh my God, it's Gillian Anderson. And she's got this like white blonde hair and it's like up in this like bouffant type.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And she's got clients, clients are coming and she's very like dismissive of this man, but like, you will know my title type situation. Like I'm a sex therapist. I am very specific on what I do. She is just incredible.
I'm doing this for me. You are just a body that is there to service me and my wants. And that is her role she's a sex therapist in the show. And part of the reason the book came to be was through her research for her role and wanting to curate all of other women's stories that she was realizing this is so much bigger than just a Netflix streaming title.
And it really kind of took her career in a new trajectory, truly, because she has like the G-Spot. She has her own like beverage company. She has this book. She's very active in like sexual education and sexual health and sexual well-being. It's really kind of given her this very visual, vocal platform and passion that she can like talk on. And Gillian says in the introduction of her book Want that, she did not write, obviously she did not write these letters. She wrote one and put it in and she will not tell us which one it is. Oh my God. And she just kind of collected all of these letters as a reflection on The Secret Garden, the book that came out in the 70s that was very foundational for a lot of women, the first of its time, that was also a collection of letters. So I love that. Here's the thing, Jessica Marie. Here is the thing about Gillian Anderson's book, Want, is that I started to read it traditionally. I have the book in my hands. I started to read it visually. And then due to time constraints, I got the audio version. Here's my confession to you. I was like halfway done, right? And then I got the audio and I was like, I started that bitch from the beginning because Gillian, you don't have to, she gets all she gets into it. She should be narrating more. And also what was really special is that, yes, it's the book is a curation of many type of people's stories, and then the audio narrators reflect that. And it says, stories by, curated stories by anonymous, and the narrators are anonymous with the exception of Gillian. And I just, there were so many things that I love about this book. And I think it is such a testament to girlhood and womanhood. And one of the things that Gillian says is, with that term, and also understand the context of we are recording this on January 31st, 2025. It has been difficult. It has been difficult, for Laura, myself, and many other people. So I say girlhood and womanhood with the context that Gillian shared with us here in the prologue of all of the curated stories, that though an imperfect term, women is used throughout. This speaks to the gendered way we understand fantasies. The contributors in this book, both women and genderqueer people, know what it means to have their voices and wants downplayed within a patriarchal society where the fantasies of men take center stage. Glorious. Absolutely glorious. Now, I'm looking at the chapters, and here's the thing. We're covering this book. It is not our place, just like it's not Gillian's place, to judge any of these stories. And we're not going to talk about these stories in detail. That's not what this is. But Gillian does read an intro to every single part. And I found those to be incredibly interesting. And it didn't really, it had a lot to do with the letters, but it was also just a general reflection on the different themes that were happening in each chapter. I'm just going to go through and say what the chapters were so you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here. First chapter, on fantasies. Chapter 2, rough and ready, to be worshipped, off limits, the captive, kink, strangers, power and submission, exploration, more, the watchers and the watched, I always have a thing for, gently. And then there is a significant postscript that is about 44 minutes that is just labeled as postscript. Now, some of these chapters were incredibly difficult to listen to. Some of these were incredibly uncomfortable. Some of these were hilarious. Some of these were relatable. Some of these were sorrowful. We are feeling lots of things here beyond just want, which I think is just the reflection of I think everything. So I do want to, Jess made an absolutely incredible point that I feel you must share with everybody, Jess. How do you think this book would be good in a school setting?
Oh, I think this would have been an incredible book, or could be. And please, when I was an undergrad, and I feel it wasn't that long ago, it was we had women and gender studies, and then I think it shifted to gender studies within a matter of the last few years in some universities. But again, we're recording this in January 2025. And those classes were not even allowed to say that terminology. Who knows if this episode will even like be censored or taken off, but we own all of our material. So we'll see about that. But that being said, like this book is so wonderful. And one of the things that Gillian says is the volume of submissions we received, however, and the degree of intimate detail divulged clearly indicate that many women want to share, they want to be heard, seen, and validated. And well, quite simply, they want. And so our title is. And I feel like it's just as important that there are so many wants and fantasies, and all of the chapters included in the themes that we explore is just so respectful, and we gain an insight that yes, there are, erotic stories shared and erotic fantasies and smut. But even if you look at these curations objectively, there's a similarity that this became their safe space for so many people because there are excerpts where people have tried to tiptoe around their friend groups to try to broach certain things that they wanted to share and realize those aren't their safe communities. But this book became that. And I feel like in a classroom setting, and this book could and is that for so many people. And the fact that we can't even feel safe to have that anymore, at least where we're located, and we know that we're not the only country that is that sequestered, it's sad. And this is like saying sad is very light compared to what we're going through. Please, mind you.
Okay, so you said a buzzword. You said smut. Let's talk about it. About it. Okay. I think it's really interesting that, well, I mean, it's not interesting. It's fucking horrific that the United States is doing what it's doing.
I wouldn't be surprised if the United States puts this on a book ban list, honestly.
Yeah. So there is a conservative push, right? As of right now, the unending month of January in 2025, they have taken away the T and Q from L.
Yeah, and I.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything unless it's LGB.
B. They've taken it. They've taken it away. Yeah. The government has taken it away. Okay. All right. So we see the trend, and the trend is we're buttoning up, right? We are being a little bit more conservative. That is the trend. So how do we combat that? Well, smut's a really good way, but they're going to ban it, right? They're going to ban it. So what do we do? Here's the bigger, why though? Why are they, why is that happening? Why are they banning
and
smut?
Also, why is this the priority? This is the priority. Why is this the priority? And for you, and this is again, this is just this is our platform. We're owning our opinions. Why? And don't tell, and you're doing it so quickly. So if you can make these moves so quickly in a matter of less than 2 weeks.
What else could you have done? If you actually fucking tried.
Yeah, that actually takes precedence.
Yeah. So you're going to do this. You're going to ban books. You're going to ban a lot of romance books. You're going to ban a lot of smut. Who reads smut? A lot of women. Why are you punishing women? Why do you constantly want to punish women? Of course,
this is the half king all over again.
Yeah. And of course, I'm using women in the way that Gillian uses it in her book. Is just an umbrella term for this specific conversation. So why are you wanting to hurt women? Why are you wanting to tamp us down? Because we're powerful with our sexuality, right? So that is part of it. That is, and if you do that, then you force us to dive deeper into fantasy, right? Do you really want that, my guy? Do you really want that, my guy? I mean, we can be incredibly imaginative when we need to be. So we don't actually need you, and that's probably very scary, right? Fuck off. But
that we have so much power.
So we have
what
so
we can
much power.
Do if we actually put ourselves and our precedents first instead of appeasing the man and appeasing, granted, some of it can come from a survival. I'm not denying that there are sometimes women act in a way of survival because of who the men they are around. I'm not denying that. But again, you're taking away women's power. Look at what we can accomplish when we realize everything that we hold.
And if you're labeling something that billions of women love and spend money on as something stupid by calling it smut or fairy porn or fairy smut, then you're taking away its importance, you're making it laughable, and you're allowing other people to invalidate like this big thing that so many people, you know, I'm speaking specifically, again, the term that Gillian used, women, in her book, find so much release in, right? So you're demonizing this entire enormous genre just as another way to just like dig at women. Again, why? Why are you doing that?
And this isn't the first time that we've had this conversation too, because we've also discussed it with like anything that women like and appreciate. Like even I think we were talking about it, maybe teen girls. I was going to say,
anything.
I remember we were talking, I think like when in our very, very early episodes with Caven, we were bringing that up because we were talking about Vampire Diaries and the originals. And it's made, like you said, to feel invalidated and we're minimized. So we get to the point where we're felt like, well, now I have to be quiet about it. Now I shouldn't talk about it. Now I have to keep it to this. Now I have to keep it to myself.
I feel shame.
Yeah.
That's powerful shit, right? So when society does all of that and conditions you to feel shame over the things that you like, where do you go? What do you do? Right? So here's the other part of it too, is that fantasy, and especially the way that it's presented in Want, the book that we're talking about, fantasy is freedom. That is what was that was what was kind of like spoken about over and over and over again. It's like, just as you were saying, some of these letters are like, I can't talk to my husband about this. I can't talk to my wife about this. I can't talk to my friends about this. But in my fantasy, I can do anything. I am the perfect version of myself. I am safe. A lot of things have to do with safety. I am safe. I am warm. I am cared for. I mean, these are very fundamental things.
Yeah. And that comes with some of the control and some of the stories and another thing is it like this fantastical, desire of you yourself as a person. Not a curated person of who you are either. Like, it's not just like, oh, I want this person to like me. Or, you know, as a physical body that I'm there. I mean, and those are some of the examples too, that is okay. But there's a common ground with so many, you know, women, again, in the context that Gillian uses in this curated series, that it's like, it's about me and I'm worthy of being myself and not some made up version.
Oh, that's so good too. Cause like you have the freedom to be completely yourself, but only in the space of your fantasy. And in doing that, you are able to explore things that you might not have even known about when you were younger. And that is part of growing and learning and experiencing and all of the aspects of womanhood. And I think that is a really wonderful, really powerful theme that runs through Want too, is that everything that you're feeling is okay. Like it's okay. Like there is no shame and you do not need to feel shame. And even writing these letters could be like therapeutic. And Gillian even says that some of the letter writers said that they felt like extreme excitement just getting it down on paper. Gillian was like, hell yeah, I fully support that. Like, have a bloody good time, I think she says.
And I think she was also shocked that people and like honored that people trusted her with these stories that they felt needed to be shared. And like you said, even if it was down on paper, it was like, here's my taboo story I want to share and, thoughts in my mind. And she even acknowledges the taboo of it all, saying it's taboo because we're taught to believe. We're not born with this shame. We're not born with, the ideas of taboo. Those are taught onto us. So, and again, what is acceptable in one culture is complete. I mean, at a very base, think of like beaches. In Europe, you can be topless and it's nothing. The concept of being topless at our beaches here. Oh my, and then again, it's the in between, right? Because if you're too covered, you get mocked. And if you're not covered enough, you get mocked as well. So you can't win. You can't win in some cultures.
That's so true. That's so true. And I think too that it is really special then that this book includes people from all walks of life. There's a lot of diversity. There were questions that were asked that you could fill out to your comfort level when you were submitting the letters. It was like age, like location, how much money you make, your marital status,
ethnic group and nationality, religion, annual income, sexual orientation, relationship status, and if you have children or not.
Yeah, and I found this was just me, my observation. I found that as I was listening, I was guessing to see if they had children or not. Like I was like, they have children. They don't. And I was like wrong every single time. I never got a single one right. So I think that too goes to just like expectation and assumption, right? Because
I thought that way with sexuality too, where I was like, everybody's queer. What do you mean you're straight? Wait, people are still just straight? I was very confused.
Like, really? Wow. But again, diversity is just really important. And that speaks to, again, the audio experience for me was just groundbreaking. It really just split this wide open for me.
Yeah, that was the person you sent me a voice memo and you were like, fucking do it. Throw the money at it. Get the voice, get the audio. It is everything. And then you were like speculating some of the narrators. And I was like, and I won't say the narrator here. But the one that you had suggested to me, I was like, I'm not going to pick up on that. And then I was like, oh shit. Right. I was like, she's not, I'm not going to pick up on it that well. Like, I'm not going to, and then I heard it and I go, oh damn, that is definitely her.
Yeah.
Cause she's known to she's narrated some of the stuff that we read.
Yeah, so I knew you'd pick up on it. I was like, whoa, that was really fun, and unexpected too. But also the diversity in the voices is something that I personally am not exposed to a lot of. There is, I know that there's full. Obviously, I know that there's full casts. I know this. But there's just not a lot of fucking old people in the books that I listen to. There's just not. There's like maybe a few, right?
It felt like with that breakdown of the key of like what their ethnicity, nationality, etc. was, it seemed like this book was very intentional to try to find similar narrators with that background. And I don't even think that they always shared their age, but some of their stories, especially some of the senior women who are sharing about their older husbands and being widowed and different stories that they had growing up or thoughts and fantasies. And they're like, sometimes we're forgotten about too. The context of some of these, that, some of the stories that were shared, the context clues were there to understand where the pairing was. And like you said, to have that range of everyone was beautiful.
It really was, because I mean, who is it? Kathy Bates is in a Matlock commercial currently. She's in Matlock, and her speech is that when women get to a certain age, they just become invisible, right? So I then thought it was really incredible to have not only the older narrators, but to have some of these stories where it's like, as Jess said, the context clues, it's very clear they've been married. They say like, my husband of 40 years, my husband of 50 years, that they have these wants, these desires, these feelings, these yearnings. It was just, on the surface level, you could say like, oh, that's very sad. But if you dig a little deeper, I personally thought that it was very, encouraging and very, joyful that these women still have these feelings. Everything that has happened, like they are at this age, they have been with this person for so long, but the desire, the want for anything is still there. And that was beautiful.
Well, and if you think about it, even with these older women who said that they've been married for 40 something years, and if you use that in the context of, say they got married in their 20s, that puts you at 60. And 60 in their generation is so different than 60 now, because you have Demi Moore looking better than I'm like breathless thinking about it. I'll have what she's having. Honest to God, I don't care. Because to also share, again, to the addition of the complexities, I'm a woman. Don't you fucking forget that.
Yeah, don't forget it. I have this like deep internal, like complex thoughts, feelings, and yearnings, and I'm going to express them. And I think the expression is really part of it. I know, Jess, you and I have talked about the vagina monologues and how that was like, for me, one of the really first like in-person, firsthand experiences where I was just like hit over the head with this like riotous femininity that was just so amazing. That was like the first time. And like from then on, my trajectory just...
How is that not on Broadway? That still should be like an off-Broadway thing year round. You don't find it often.
You don't. You really don't. My trajectory really changed after seeing that in my academic career. And also it was a very like malleable time for me. But it really like set me on a path. Right. And I am unaware of anything of that magnitude to have come out since, but I do feel like this book could easily turn into something like that. Readings. I think it'd be wonderful. I think Gillian could host readings. I think it could be a very powerful, very cleansing experience for everybody. Just wonderful.
I'm just thinking how wonderful that, like, and I would sit, you could, and listen to every single one.
Yeah. I'd be
every single one.
Completely sat. And that could be something, for this generation. And I feel like we need something like that in this generation, because here's the thing, Jess. Gen Z was going to save us, but we have steered a little bit conservative because the boys got a hold of Joe Rogan.
And Andrew Tate.
Like the boys took us there. And
the boys with the podcast mics.
The boys with the podcast mics took them there, right? So it's only fair if the women had a loud platform to talk about what they want to as well. And there's a few, don't get me wrong, of course. But like, right? Like, why not something like this, something powerful, something that would really like move a lot of people. But again, it's also the inherent shame of expressing something like this or being around something like this, because for a lot of people, even general conversations like this are too much. And they say that in a lot of these stories, like, I cannot talk about this with my friends.
Yeah, there's a need of feeling like you need permission to have deeper conversations like this. I mean, even in our friendship, I really feel like it was like the long train rides we'd be on together that we were able to like really dig deep, get into the depth of conversation and of these important topics that you're trying to navigate around different levels of friendship, and still as adults, we're not always able to have those deep conversations.
And why is that? Because we don't have the time. We are so busy all the time that we are not able to sit and relax for an extended period and really have the girl bonding time, right? Because we are so busy taking care of other people and or working. I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about everybody, right? So I think that is also a big part of it. If you keep everybody hungry and busy then they are not able to have time or energy to sit down and have these deeper conversations about thoughts, feelings, actions, plans.
Which is why it was such a big thing with TikTok. It was one of the things, and if you really dig deep with TikTok, and it's not just like so many people make it so quick, oh, it's a social media platform, or it's this, oh, it's that. TikTok, albeit depending on your algorithm, was a way to inspire conversations that you might not necessarily knew how to approach with your friendships. And it stimulated those conversations, or because it would easily be, back and forth spamming, but you learn so much about each other, and you were on a social media platform, but it also created communities to add to those conversations, because we've talked about this on the podcast before. There's not a lot of third spaces. And yes, you can go active, you could go be active in your community, but that could also still be very intimidating. I even think about like something that we talk about with Drive Me Crazy, where Adrian Garnier's character, he has a very deep girlfriend and friend group that have these conversations that not necessarily all high school kids have at that age. And if you're walking into that unfamiliar, you can feel intimidated if you don't know how to hold your own, or you have people who can look down at you. What do you mean? What do you mean that you have no idea what we're talking about, and can be very condescending? I mean, you and I had shared a conversation earlier this week, or even last week, where I was telling you about something that happened at work, and I felt so small because of just the vocabulary that I used in a conversation. And I just kind of sat back, and I felt so small. And Laura had to remind me who the fuck I was, basically. And but I mean, it's a perfect example.
You're too dumb to understand my big ass words. Let me use one you understand. Cunt.
But it was like, it's again, these conversations that not everybody can have.
It's also the willingness, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that is so, I mean, again, especially now, sometimes we talk about, and we've talked about it in a couple of our past episodes that we've recorded, about the echo chambers, right? And the people who need to hear some of these conversations aren't willing to have those discussions in a respectful manner.
Well, yeah. And they don't, it's like beating your head against a brick wall. And there's nothing comes of it. So why bother? That's the thing. That is the thing too. You get to a point where it's like, why bother? But like, we should bother, but at what point? Not at the point of your mental health. That's the line, right? Like, that's the line. But again, that's why something like this book is so important, because not only are you able to read about the sexual wants of women from around the world, all aspects of life, all ages. It's amazing. It's this level of intimacy that is a little bit disconnected. So if, for example, on TikTok, that's a little bit too on the nose for you, having somebody like look at you and tell you like, hey, or looking at edits and being like, having all of these things, and you have like these feelings, if that's too much, maybe taking a step back and reading something like this might be very helpful, because it is, again, it's fantasy, but it is not, we're not in romantasy. Like, we're not in like a fiction book here. This is very much grounded. It's an anthology. This is very much grounded in reality here. So it is a way for somebody to really explore something, but at a distance. And that could be very wonderful for somebody if they need it.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to what you said about the willingness. And it's one of those discussions that we always talk about in reading, and how being educated in reading, not necessarily, it doesn't even have to be nonfiction. I mean, these stories happen to be nonfiction. But the more you read, the more of an open mind somebody has. And it's so funny because another indoctrination came in today, as it does in the United States of late. And it was saying that students in education through grades K through 12 are basically not happy with the way America is. And they feel like that's the education system's fault. No, that is America's fault that kids aren't happy with America, because we are educated, because we are reading, we are questioning things, and 1 + 1 is not equaling 2 in what we have preached. And Laura and I grew up in a time where you had to say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning before you even started the day. And part of the Pledge of Allegiance line, actually it's the last specific line that says, "with liberty and justice for all." Now, we believe that. We are here talking about it. We're learning about it in the fantasy stories we read, because sometimes at least everything goes well eventually in the fantasy. But, they didn't mean for all. They meant for all of the white men who wrote that. And we're seeing that in real time currently.
There's also a lot about reclaiming your power too, because we've already talked about it in this episode, but like, women are very powerful, and they are doing this because we are so powerful and they are afraid. So the more that we explore and know ourselves, the more that we will be able to reach out and find community when we need it, right? Like, if you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people are scared of what they don't know.
I was going to say, it's the isolation of if you isolate people that we don't talk and we don't share and we don't have that community, then there is a fear there.
Mm-hmm. And going back to what you said, Jess, that is one of the really beautiful things about TikTok, is that it's able to connect you to, if you are willing, to so many other people of different backgrounds, and it's just all over the world, and it's just so wonderful. But again, that's some powerful shit. And having collective thought is very powerful. So with this book, if you are reading this and the collective thought is all of these feelings that I'm feeling are okay, then you have just thrown off like a shackle, right? Like you have just freed yourself of something. And that is special.
But feeling that powerful is exactly what the women who submitted their stories felt when submitting for Want to this curated series. I mean, I can't recommend it more, honestly. And I feel like, take time for yourself. And even if you feel like some of the topics could be heavy or you need to approach it from afar, some of the stories are a page. Some of them are even 3 lines. Some of them are even what they feel is taboo. I think it's in the chapter Off Limits, where it was just I have a thing for my best friend's brother. There you go. Best friend's brother trope. In our head, it's been this, it's a sub trope in the variety of tropes that are in our romance books that we read. But to somebody else, that felt like an off limit thing that they needed to share. And there is nothing too big or too small in these stories that they're sharing. And that's something that Gillian is very adamant to say. I wish I could have published everything. It would have been over 1,000 pages, and my editor would have killed me. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a second anthology of them, which would be wonderful. Honestly, it's like the present day's chicken soup for the soul.
It really is. And just as you say, as you're going through some of these chapters, sometimes Gillian interjects and she's like, hey, heads up. In this chapter, there's some really heavy stuff going on, and you are the owner of your reading experience, just like you are the owner of your soul, your body, everything, your mind. So if you don't want to read these particular stories because they could be upsetting, you can go ahead and skip this. It is no biggie. And I love that because, Jesse, we talk about sometimes in audiobooks, there are no disclaimers. And the disclaimer only exists in the print version or the ebook version, right? So even just to have her come in and read that was just really wonderful. And again, it's something that I don't feel like gets talked about a lot, which is taking ownership of your reading experience. And I think it gets touched on a little bit when people DNF and they say like, no, I'm going to DNF. Like that is like taking control. And that is, but it's also in a situation like this, like choosing not to read something for your mental health is a very strong choice. And to know that you have that option is wonderful, right? Like she didn't have to put that disclaimer in there. You could have just gone in.
She can do no wrong.
She can,
honestly. And I mean, and this again, this came through her research for her character, Jean, in sex education to be this, I don't want to say emotionally mature parent, because as we know later in the series, we're like, oh, you got some work to do. You're not as emotionally mature as you thought. But at the very foundation, she is open-minded. She is a character who's willing to learn, willing to listen, willing to respect people's boundaries and open a line of communication, not just with her clients, but with her son, with the people in her son's life. And it's, again, I don't want to say it's a character arc for her because her character stays the same, but it's the people around her who are the people who are the ones who become willing to have these conversations.
I would just like to talk briefly about how Dr. Jean Milburn reads Adam to complete filth when they're smoking weed on their balcony. She's like, I didn't say you had a problem with performance. Do you, Adam? With your man melt? Amazing. Amazing. Stunning. But really, though, she just looks incredible.
I want to know if there's bloopers to that show.
Oh, my God.
I'm sure there have to be.
There have to be absolutely the best bloopers in the entire world. But, Jess, you mentioned that Gillian, her character, has a good line of conversation with her son, and she does. And there is a part in the pilot that I did want to touch on. It's towards the end, and they're sitting on the couch. And she says, like, I have noticed, Otis, that you are pretending to masturbate. Do you want to talk about it? Normally mortifying, right? But like this is the household we're in. Like, Otis is used to this. This is what we're going. And he's like, no. He starts, no, I don't want to talk about it. Why do you da 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 da? She's like, Otis, it's performative. I know that you're not masturbating. You clearly want me to see this.
Because he creates a display. He makes a whole dramatic to-do about it.
Yeah. She's like, so what is it? What is it? And at the end, he comes to her. He's like, I cannot masturbate. I'm working through it. I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, hey, all right. That's what we're here for. Open lines of communication, right? No shame. None. And especially between mother and son. And not in a weird way. In a very healthy, like...
Yeah, it's not like this Oedipus thing. Because she was going to say something and he was like,
Mom, make that joke.
I'm dealing with it the way I'm dealing with it on my own. Mm-hmm. But I am communicating. And all she said was, well, thank you for telling me, and goes about her day and keeps drinking her coffee.
Yeah, like an absolute stunning icon that she is. And she says, Gillian says, that in doing all of this, it really made her kind of re-examine her connection to her characters as an actor. Here, I'm bringing this into fan fiction before we kind of wrap up here. Because obviously, if you're alive and breathing, you know that there is a incredible amount of fan fiction about Mulder and Scully.
I never watched the show and I even knew that.
I mean, come on. Come on. And Gillian knows that. Gillian is very aware.
Some of your foundational friendships when you had moved from Detroit to Florida stemmed from X-Files.
Yes.
I know this.
Yes.
That you still talk to these two people.
Yep, it was very important. It still is very important. It's a very, like, deep part of my life. But Gillian is very aware of this, and she's very aware of fan fiction, and she's very aware of the outlet that gives people to use the character. And she says, like, that puts her kind of in a weird position, because, like, does she own that character? She embodied that character for so long, but it's separate. You have to let it go, right? Because she also, when she played Margaret Thatcher, discovered that there were a lot of people that were really into Margaret Thatcher, especially her ankles. And she's like, and that opened up this whole other like kind of avenue for exploration that she was completely unaware of. So, like, Gillian herself has experienced all of this growth within her own career, and she has, throughout all of her own characters, really touched on multitudes of exploration and fantasy for a lot of people. And I mean, who knew that one person could do such a thing? But she is just a glorious icon. But Jess, here's my one singular question for you about the book, and you can be as vague as you want to, but I have my answer. Was there a chapter where you were like, ooh, I don't know?
I'm trying to look at my chapter listings. Hold on. I feel like it's maybe individual stories more than anything, but there's an understanding. You know what the thing is also, it's like, I feel like the books that we have read and explored have prepared me so well for some of these. And I say that in the context of, we are in the year 2025. I have also seen Baby Girl. You have seen Nosferatu. And there are people we have overheard, and we've shared these stories of feeling uncomfortable watching these movies. And at first I was thinking, well, have we become desensitized? And I don't think it's that we've become desensitized. I think we've become, if anything, more empathetic to understanding where some of these needs and wants and curiosities and fantasies and explorations. And even if it's like, look, that's not for me personally, but I understand, and who am I to judge where somebody else is coming from? Especially like if you think of a CNC, everybody has a different relationship to that if you have gone through something traumatic.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
What about you?
Excellent answer. Oh, my answer. The majority of stories where I was like, I'm not judging, I'm just asking where it came from, is the kink section.
Okay.
It was just the majority of like, really? Wait, really? Okay.
I feel like I've also read, there's this author, Sarah Kate. She had a kink series called The Salacious Players Club, and it was about like kink clubs, and every book explored like so far a different kink. I'm with you there, where some of them where I was like, ooh, gotta push through this. But again, the exposure to the things that we have read, and, you know, I feel like it's just changed the conversation again of being more empathetic towards others, which we could all do.
What? Sorry, I have one more question.
You're going to say which one did I really like? Because I have some like because at first I was like, I'm going to grab a pen next to my bed. And then I realized the pen was blue. And I was like, I don't want a blue pen. And then I found my pink glitter pen. And I was like, that's perfect. And there were lines from stories to like what you said earlier in the episode where you're like, some things are super relatable. And it's also that, have I never had an original experience?
No, I'm not going to ask you anything. That's a little too personal. No, I was just going to ask you, like, the impact. Like, do you think that this book is impactful?
Oh, 100%. I think it's so...
sorry, just a caveat. Because it's again, we're using women in the context that Gillian uses it. It's written like to, for, about, women.
Like womanhood, girlhood.
Yeah.
I feel like it goes, like you said, with I think it's impactful. And to add on to that, I know we were talking about like gendered studies courses that this could be used for, even if it wasn't used, where it's not necessarily a required reading in the syllabus, but an additional reading. I love the example that you shared about this being the next vagina monologues, because even if you go to this, if you went to this and it was a reading and you had different people reading the different excerpts, it's the conversation that you can sit with and then talk about afterwards. I think that's what is so impactful and necessary. You?
I agree. I think it's absolutely necessary. I think that there is a tendency for books like this to be overlooked, to get labeled as smut, to get labeled as porn, to get labeled as insignificant, shameful, bad. And all it is a collection of women's stories. Isn't that powerful? They want that so badly, to take that away from us. I think this is it is wonderful. I think that if somebody stumbled upon this because they're a fan of Gillian, they like such education, and they read this, it could be eye-opening. I think it's comforting. I think that the diversity is just really wonderful. And again, speaking to connection, speaking to experiences, speaking to getting out of your bubble and just having conversations and trying to build a community. It's scary out there. It's scary. We know. But when you have community, when you find that kind of connection, it is really powerful. And if we choose to not spend the time or take the time to do this, right? Like we were saying, like, you need to have the time to sit down and think about and have these conversations. But if we're always busy and we're always working and we're always being a caretaker, then the only place that we can really go sometimes is our fantasies. And that is okay.
That is our safe space.
That is your safe space. When everything goes to shit, your fantasy is there to catch you, just like we will be every week.
That being said, feel free to follow us at ACOFAE Podcast on Instagram. We're also currently both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. And please let us know where you would like to see us at. We will be receptive. We'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.